So we're talking about your how to treat the opposite sex, which is a really interesting topic. So Ro, tell me, why is it so important that we have this conversation with our child?
Oh, it's a really huge one. And when it comes down to it, kids really need to be clear about how they sort of look at and value and interact with the opposite sex. There's a whole lot of stereotypes flying around. Things like, you're crying like a little girl and all that kind of stuff. And we actually do need to tackle that pretty early because it can become a quite large ongoing issue that can even impact people's careers, if they take those sorts of tropes and stereotypes into adulthood. They pick up cues from culture, music, TV, and their peers. So obviously parents need to be able to have a say in that process. So, when we talk about having the conversation, I always recommend don't just have one big one. It's overwhelming and confronting, and they're not going to remember 99% of it. So have lots and lots and lots of little conversations throughout your child's life, and keep them age appropriate. You can have conversations like this with a 5-year-old, talking about boundaries and consent and those sorts of things, right through to 18-year-olds when they're out there dating and leaving home and having all those adventures.
Because it is important that we are making sure that our children are treating the opposite sex with respect and consideration and understanding, I guess. Uh,
Mm.
So how can we parents start this conversation with our child?
The best way to do it is to really raise it when it's relevant to the child. Like the best times is when they're, yeah, actually having a chat to them about other stuff. What did you get up to today? Are you catching up? Were we having a sleepover on the weekend? Those kinds of things. And when conversations do come up, that's when to do it because they're engaged and they're interested in it. Most parents will know if you come in and start talking to your kids about something they don't give two hoots about. It's like talking to a brick wall, kind of like, when going up to them while they're in the middle of, playing Animal Crossing and asking them to unpack the dishwasher. Straight away, they might do it, but the hackles will be up and it'll be a grumpy scenario rather than, an open scenario. So, if someone starts talking about, for example, AFL women, oh, the girls' footy team's going really well. Well, have a chat about that, explain why it's reasonably new thing, explain what happened and have those conversations when they do come up. It's the best way to do
Mm,
it.
yeah, I agree. Um, so what if we never have this conversation about the opposite sex with our children? What sort of issues will come up for them in their life?
So many. The really big picture, ones, which is very challenging for any parent to hear, is that disrespect for the opposite sex, especially males towards females, is a very long-standing issue that's literally resulting in death and domestic violence. DV and family violence stems from disrespect and a need for control, and that is absolutely adults acting out of a lifetime of lack of respect for the opposite sex. So that's the really challenging stuff. You can also end up raising misogynists, and that can go for young women as well. Women can internalize misogyny. Especially when you have, women saying like, "Oh, I'm not really a girly girl," because they've been brought up to think that girly stuff is weak or horrible, and it can really. I think one of the worst things on a more practical level is when people are misogynists as adults, it will really impact their career. Um, Men will lose their jobs if they are sexist in the workplace. They are going to spend their careers being reprimanded, and quite rightly so. So it's not a wise thing to, bring your kids up because they're genuinely going to spend their adulthood unpacking and unlearning. What it is they're doing. So that's a really big picture, but also on a more granular level, on a really practical level, it can mean issues when they're dating. It can mean, a lack of understanding around online bullying, and just a whole raft of other things. So it is one of those things that you do want to make clear that, we're not a different species. We're all the same people, treat people well in general and try to remove gender out of it to a large degree because it's a social construct. It really shouldn't be a factor whether you're friends with someone or treat them well.
Mm. So what sort of values should we have our children have in mind when treating the opposite sex then?
Absolutely. I would say mutual respect is probably the most important one of the whole lot. Just looking around and going, yes, I'm going to, treat the people around me as I would like to be treated myself. And that's a really, really straightforward one. And when it comes to values, I think, this is a great opportunity for parents to bring their own values into it as well and be really clear about what, as a parent, your expectations are for your child, and no matter what the age is, and that can be anything from your religious position, your moral position, those kind of things. So what's important to you, make sure to share that, because they, as I said earlier, they do take a lot of cues from music and TV and movies and all of those kind of things. And parents need to be able to have a say. And there was a study that came out a year or two ago where they interviewed a lot of teenagers about, do you understand the difference between, consent and respect and film and TV and how it's depicted? And they were all saying, yes, we completely get it. It's movie, it's a TV show, it's not real life. But when they went and delved a little bit deeper and asked for their responses to particular scenarios, they actually didn't. Teenagers in particular think that they're smarter than they are and think they understand more than they do. So there was a real bias there. They go, I know it's just rubbish. I know it's just a song, but it does get in. So it is really important that parents do continue to make that clear and, share their own values with their kids, definitely.
Social media and media in general plays a big part of their perceptions. How can we ensure that our children, like you just demonstrated then, that they think they're aware but they're not? So how can we try and ensure that they have these values, especially online, because we don't want them being sexist online in particular?
Yeah, definitely. That is a really challenging one, and I don't think there's any one size fits all, response to that, because our online lives are conducted in such a wide frame of reference. If we were having this conversation 8 or 10 years ago, we would be talking just about, say, Instagram and Facebook, whereas kids are absolute digital natives. 3-year-olds can drive an iPad better than most adults, and so they are using things like game servers, messenger apps. They've got, the newer social media forms, TikTok and all those kinds of things. And even, Discords and Clubhouse and those kinds of platforms. There are just a myriad of ways to digitally communicate. And it's moved so far from, don't be an idiot on Instagram and don't post things you'll regret. It's just so much broader than that. And so I think a really great thing parents can do is be really, really clear about the difference between how you conduct yourself in real life when you're talking face to face with someone, and how they sort of conduct themselves when they are doing any kind of digital messaging. And that includes, gaming with their mates with a headset on and, shouting and screaming and getting right into it and having a good time. As a professional who's worked with a lot of teens, I see huge differences between what people are like in real life and how they conduct themselves on game servers and Discord servers and things like that. They know they're not being monitored or checked. The shackles come off and they almost treat it like, oh, this is the Wild West, this is my freedom, I can just say and do whatever I think and want. And it is absolutely appalling sometimes. I worked on a game project about 2 years ago with a lot of really young people, really awesome people who are great to work with in real life. And the Discord was absolutely appalling. These were university students, working in a professional setting, producing a literal game, and were absolutely disgusting to each other online. And they would never speak to each other like that when we sat in and had meetings and, had development crush days and stuff. So there is a massive difference between, how they do speak to people and how many people of all ages conduct themselves online. So I think that keyboard warrior conversation really needs to happen a lot. And people, parents will have to have that conversation. You're probably going to have to conduct yourself to a higher standard than what your peers are if you're going to carry this across, because obviously peer pressure is massive, and teenagers in particular will replicate what they see around them, which is going to be a really big challenge. And I don't think there's any easy solution to that.
It's certainly a tough one, because it's I know for me, like you see the odd sexist post come out, and it's quite funny sometimes that talks
Mm,
about the two different genders, but I do hold back from posting them myself because I feel that it's just not the right thing to do.
mm. Absolutely. There's a lot to be said for having some digital literacy as a parent, as an adult, and sharing that down with your kids. Like, yes, they might see a meme that is absolutely hilarious, but if it's contributing to a stereotype, is if it's, potentially going to hurt someone in their friendship circle, it is worth thinking twice before posting it. And it's like a lot of people when Meghan Markle, announced her miscarriage a while ago, Twitter did light up like a bit of a Christmas tree, and a lot of it was really derogatory. And one woman posted a viral tweet saying, Meghan Markle isn't on Twitter and she's not going to see all of these hateful tweets. But the 50% of women that have experienced pregnancy loss will see your tweets and will know that they can't trust you. So what we do post tells our friendship circle, our family group, our broader network, the standard that we accept and the standard that we walk by. And it does impact friendships and relationships and whether people trust you to even confide in you. They might enjoy hanging out, but they may never become close friends purely based on, what people post. So it is definitely something worth keeping an eye on and really thinking twice about. And if parents are in a position to impart that, it's sophisticated, nuanced thinking, but if they can share some of that thinking with their kids, it's going to do them a great service.
Agreed. So, any last parting advice for parents listening right now to teach their children about treating the opposite sex?
I would just say have lots of small conversations than, big thunderclap from God type ones, because they do tend to sink in, and it also, engenders trust, being able to build that trust with your child, no matter what age they are, that they can actually come to you and talk to you about these things and that they can ask for advice without, being judged. Is really important as well. So lots and lots and lots of consistent conversations, be really consistent, and do call out poor conduct when you see it. And there are going to be stages where they're doing it all the time and it's just driving you insane and you just want to throw a wet tea towel over their head or something and be done with it. But it's definitely worth persisting because it will pay off. They will learn, it will sink in, and they'll just have a better time of life for it.
Thank you so much for your advice on how we can talk to our children about treating the opposite sex. Sorry, the opposite sex, not success. I wish you all the success with that conversation, parents.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much again for being on the show, Ray.
Thank you so much.